You know, as humans, we are prone to making mistakes. We make mistakes all the time, but I beg of you, now that, or after you watch this video, there's gonna be these 7 mistakes that I'm gonna talk about when it comes to your TSP, your thrift savings plan. Don't make these. Don't make these mistakes, right? Because these mistakes make a big difference now, right? And how you feel about retirement, but especially in retirement when you're going to be living off of your TSP in the tunes of thousands and tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars that are in flux when these mistakes are made sometimes. So there's 7. Again, the first few are some of the obvious ones, and then some of the last ones are maybe some of the less obvious ones. So we're going to dive right in and get started. So number 1, and again, this was one of the obvious ones, and that is not saving enough early on, okay? Because as many of you already know, $1 that you save early in your career is worth a ton more than $1 you save right now, right? Because that $1 that you saved early has tons of years to double, triple, quadruple, to grow over time, right? And so one big mistake I see all the time is people don't really worry about investing too much until they get mid-career, maybe late career, where they don't really think about it much. They don't get serious about saving. So wherever you are at, even if you're close to retire, even if you're retired, I don't care. Get serious about your money. Make sure you know what's going on, right? Make sure you know how much you're saving to the TSP, how it's invested. Get serious about it now because, again, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The best time to invest in the TSP was 20 years ago. But the second best time is right now. You can make a difference by doing something and get serious about it right now. Now, mistake number 2, and again, this is another one of the obvious ones, and that is too many people don't save more than 5%. 5%. Because right now, the default, when a new federal employee is hired, the default is 5% of their salary is going to be automatically put in the TSP. Now, they can change that, but often they don't, or for whatever reason, someone says, hey, you know, I'm going to do 5%, I'll get the match as well, and then I'm good to go. You want to be saving more than that. 5% into your TSP is simply, for the vast majority of people, is not going to be enough for people to retire, generally when they want to retire, with a confident and comfortable retirement. You want to be saving more. Now, there's no magic number. Dave Ramsey uses 15% as a rule of thumb. I think that's a great place to start. Now, if you could save more, definitely do. Maybe you're maxing out the TSP. What else? Where else can you save? What about an IRA? What about a brokerage account? Where else can you save money? And that's certainly something you want to think about. Now, of course, if you have high interest debts, if you don't have an emergency fund, focus on those first. You certainly want to get rid of your credit cards. You want to get rid of that. But the moment you get that under control, which you should as soon as you possibly can, once those are under control, you want to be saving more than 5%. 5% is a good start if that's all you can do, but how can you improve every single pay raise, right? And maybe every single year? How can you do a little better? What is your plan for retirement, and how are you going to save into the TSP to make sure you have the money for yourself down the road? Now, mistake number 3, and that is I see people taking out TSP loans all the time, and honestly, many people that I talk to regret it. They regret it. Now, a TSP loan inherently is not bad. It is not bad. There are some times when it makes a ton of sense to take one. I'm not going to dig on that too much because honestly, the vast majority of the time that I talk to people, they take it at a time when maybe they still don't have, maybe it's an emergency that comes up, maybe they want to add on to their house, whatever it is, they take a TSP loan. And one of the huge issues with that is that your money is not in your TSP growing. So easily thousands and thousands of dollars can be lost just by not having your money in there growing for you. So as a general rule, I don't like TSP loans as a general rule because your money is not working for you. And another miscellaneous reason why I simply don't like TSP loans is if you retire and you still have a TSP loan balance outstanding, well, it counts as a taxable distribution, which again is potentially an unwanted and surprising taxable event that you certainly don't want to have in retirement. But again, I do understand that things come up, emergencies happen, and sometimes you need some cash. And that's why it's so crucial to have an emergency fund, to have funds set aside that's not in your TSP, that is not in your home, and it's in cash, ready to go, even when you're working, especially while you're retired, so that when things come up, you are going to be okay, and that is crucial. All right, big mistake number 4 in your TSP, and that is when people simply invest way too conservatively as they approach and into retirement. Because many of us know, we understand inherently, okay, when we're early in our career, we want to be aggressive, but as we approach retirement, many people, okay, we got to be super, super conservative. And while you certainly want to be more conservative at retirement time than, let's say, when you're 20 years old, obviously, you certainly don't want to be 100% in the G fund by any means, right? And take 2021, the year 2021 as an example. Well, in 2021, inflation was crazy, right? It was between 5 to 7%, depending on what you look at. And the G fund really didn't return very much at all, right? So if you put all your money into the G fund, well, you just lost 5%, right? And the G fund really isn't going to grow over time. And in retirement can be a long time, right? It can be 20, 30, 40 years. And you want your money not only just to make it to the end, but to make sure that you can maintain your standard of living over time, regardless of what inflation does, right? So certainly you want to be more conservative than when you're young, but you certainly don't want to overdo the conservative investing because that can be a huge risk as well. Now, big TSP mistake number 5, and that is, I hear all the time where many federal employees, one of the only places that they get information about their TSP, about their retirement, is around the water cooler, right? From their coworkers, from maybe their uncle, whoever. They kind of get little bits of information and advice from these different miscellaneous spots where sometimes the sources are not always that valid, always that good, right? And sometimes, and I have heard of circumstances where people have gotten great advice from just a random coworker, whoever, right? But in general, there's so much misinformation and bad advice that is passed just over the water cooler that so many mistakes are made because they follow that advice, right? So I'm not saying never take any advice, never listen to anyone else's ideas. I'm saying, hey, make sure you fact check some stuff, right? Make sure you do some research. Make sure you learn from people that are dealing with this stuff all the time, that you know you're making the best decision for you. Because when it comes to your money and your retirement, there's not a lot of do-overs, right? There's not a lot of do-overs where if you make a mistake, boom, you're going to be paying the price of that. And it's hard to, you can do better later, but it's hard to really make up for a mistake that you made. So you want to make sure you do it right the first time. That is so much easier to do it right the first time than doing it twice, trying to fix your mistakes, trying to go back and do better the next time. All right, big mistake number 6, and that is trying to time the markets. Okay, so in the TSP, again, it's difficult to time the market. You only get a few trades a month. It's not the most conducive place for that sort of thing, but some people still kind of are in that deal where they want to say, okay, the market's going to go down, I'm going to go to the G fund, and then it's going to come back up, I'm going to change it, and they watch it. And there's even services out there that say, hey, you should move to the G fund. Here, they give you advice on what they think the market's going to do, right? And honestly, sometimes I've seen it work out really well for people, right? But many times I have seen it really bite people in the butt because the strategy is so difficult to implement over time. And honestly, when it comes to retirement, that's all we care about is over time, right? Because if you win once, lose once, win once, I mean, do you really want to deal with that level of uncertainty over time? And again, even if you don't try to time the market, there is some level of uncertainty. But if you look at just the raw data, it is so much easier to have fairly consistent investment returns over time by staying in the market and holding than trying to time it, right? If you could successfully time the market successfully, then yeah, you can make a ton of money, but it is so very difficult, even for the professionals that are in it, breathing it every day. It's very difficult. It's like trying to catch a falling knife, where you could do it, but you could also lose a finger, right? And is that a risk you want to take with your retirement money? In my opinion, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. So that's certainly mistake number 6. All right, mistake number 7, our last one here. And this one I don't talk about very often, but I think is crucial. And this is a mistake that happens in 2 different places. First, I think some people watch their TSP way too much. Way too much. Where every little bump in the market, they're watching it, they're looking at it so close and they get freaked out, they get nervous, they get anxious because they're watching every single move, right? And that's bad. You don't want to do that, right? But on the other side, you don't want to be watching it so little or never check into your TSP, so you have no clue what's going on either. You want to find a balance of, okay, I'm going to check my TSP once a quarter. I'm going to check my TSP every 6 months. Whatever it is, find a good time to go in, make sure your investment still makes sense for you, to make sure, okay, how have my investments done, right? Am I saving enough? Do I want to use the Roth TSP? Just at a time period where you want to go in and reevaluate where you're at and maybe make changes. But you don't want to be in there too often, because in the short term, it is very difficult to kind of keep your head and to stick to a long-term strategy. You want to stick to a long-term strategy, and if you don't watch it every day, it's a lot easier, right? For example, when it comes to home prices, right? Most people think, hey, the stock market is way more volatile than, let's say, your home value, right? Well, that's not necessarily the case. Home values fluctuate quite a bit, right? But because you're not selling your home very often, you're not checking what it's worth all the time, we don't notice the fluctuations, right? But it does fluctuate, right? So you have to kind of build that in with your TSP, where you don't want to check it too often, but you don't want to check it never, right? You want to find a balance, find a system that works for you to check it on a regular basis, to make changes, to make improvements as needed, but you don't have to overkill it. So those are the 7 mistakes that I see all the time from the TSP. If there's any big mistakes that maybe you've made, if you want to share in the comments below, that'd be great. Or the 6 mistakes that you've seen other people make, definitely share that. It helps the whole community to learn, to get better, so we can all do a little better with our investments and the TSP. So I hope that was helpful. Have an incredible rest of your day. We'll see you next time.